As you will find out, the crosscut saw world is a subject rich in history, a significantly new vocabulary for trail workers, and with a lot of rules and best practices to ensure the safety of a saw team and trail visitors alike. Hello everyone, this is Guy Hemlin with Trailkeepers of Oregon. I'm a crew leader with TKO, and we are creating this introductory video for those unfamiliar with the crosscut Sawyer world. This is an overview, providing a 30,000-foot view of the volunteer crosscut Sawyer world. Classroom course offerings are in much greater detail. TKO is planning a one-day basic Sawyer introductory workshop. Also, TKO will offer a two-day classroom, Forest Service sanctioned, crosscut Sawyer class that could lead to a Forest Service certification as a Sawyer. We have created a series of YouTube videos for this information that supplements a formal classroom situation, particularly when it is not convenient for a public gathering. It's important to mention, however, that this material does not substitute nor qualify for an official Forest Service training course. This information is generalized background material to be part of an informal discussion for folks new to the volunteer crosscut Sawyer world. As mentioned, there will be a series of videos covering different aspects of a basic introductory workshop for prospective volunteer crosscut Sawyers. Videos like what are the Forest Service regulatory requirements for a volunteer saw program, and how must TKO meet those federal requirements, to a discussion of what is a saw team, and then to more complex subjects like log bind analysis and cut plans. Subsequent classroom training sessions will be in greater depth, and then a formal Forest Service sanctioned training course will provide a student with the information and knowledge to, hopefully, when coupled with crosscut saw hands-on experience, enable a student to become a Forest Service certified apprentice Sawyer. Part of the learning curve for folks new to the crosscut Sawyer world is the extensive vocabulary of terminology, rules, and nuanced definitions. One goal of this video series is to give you the big picture that, when coupled with some required reading like Saws That Sing, will give you a basis to ask many questions. So let's begin. So what's an official Forest Service saw program? The Forest Service becomes an umbrella-type organization where groups like TKO can opt in. Such groups must adopt the Forest Service rules, which includes training, evaluation, and certification, including record keeping. The key takeaways are: there is a national standardization at the federal level of a Forest Service sanctioned saw program. In other words, uniformity of a saw program requirements across all Forest Service jurisdictions nationwide. The Forest Service National Program provides specific direction on Sawyer qualifications, training requirements, and the certification and evaluation procedures. A very detailed program definition, some 31 pages, in the Forest Service Manual FSM 2358. And the Forest Service program is evolving. Expect more standardized training materials in 2021, where the Forest Service goal is consistency in Sawyer training nationwide. Because most of the FSM 2358 requirements are delegated by the Forest Service to the TKO SAW program coordinators, TKO must do the following: provide training, certification, and recertification training by Forest Service authorized instructors or instructor evaluators. Maintain TKO records for the above, which includes copies of the first aid and CPR certifications and the issued Forest Service National Sawyer Certification Card. Ensure that TKO sawyers use crosscut saws within the limits of their certification or qualifications. The primary purpose of a Sawyer certification is for sawyer safety by confirming that the sawyer has met applicable training requirements and has successfully completed a Sawyer training and field proficiency evaluation. So, in short, there's a lot of responsibility delegated to TKO for classroom and field proficiency training to produce certified sawyers with the skills, knowledge, and an awareness of relevant safety concerns. There are 3 primary Sawyer certification levels as a crosscut sawyer within the Forest Service framework. Each level has an increasing set of responsibilities, knowledge, and demonstrated field skills. An A sawyer is an apprentice. A B sawyer has gained considerable knowledge and field skills sufficient to become a saw team leader. A C sawyer is most experienced and demonstrates skills to work at the highest levels of complexity. Let's now discuss the crosscut saw in the next section. The crosscut saw in itself has a very interesting history. Let's talk a bit about the long history of saws in general. The classic plain tooth pattern, like on a carpenter's saw, dates back to the Egyptian period about 4,000 years ago. Their saws were made of bronze. Some 2,000 years ago, the Romans started using iron for their saws. The iron saw, forged by a blacksmith, became popular in the 15th century Europe. During these centuries, however, the axe was still the primary cutting tool for both felling, cutting small logs, and splitting wood. Remember, wood was the primary fuel for heating. In the U.S., the crosscut saw came into wide usage in the mid-1800s for felling trees, mostly because of the emerging steel industry allowed for mass production of saws from plate steel. The emergence of the chainsaw in the 1940s and the consequent higher productivity of a chainsaw sawyer replaced the use of the crosscut. But with the National Wilderness Act of 1964, the crosscut again emerged as the primary tool used in wilderness areas. Newer tooth patterns accelerated the usage, particularly with the raker designs to clear the cut noodle from the kerf. Most of the crosscut saw design innovation occurred in the late 1800s through the early 1900s, with custom tooth patterns for hardwoods versus softwoods. Antique or vintage saws came from this period and are still highly valued today, mostly because of the high carbon steel and the shape of the overall saw. There are 2 basic saw types, a rip saw and a crosscut saw. A rip saw is designed to cut the length of a log. A crosscut, as the name implies, cuts across the fiber grain of a log. If you look down the cutting line of the blade, a rip saw has a square-topped tooth. The purpose of the rip tooth is to chisel the wood fiber in line with the length of the log. The crosscut tooth has a sharp point at the corners, usually filed at an angle to the line of the cut, front to back that is, so as to cut across the log fibers. For crosscut saws, there are 2 basic types, a felling saw, which has a curved back, and a bucking saw, which has a straight back. A felling saw is lighter in weight and narrower at the midsection. This allows for the insertion of wedges sooner than for a bucking saw. The bucking saw is stronger, but weighs more. Weight can be a big factor if you are carrying the saw for any distance. Most crosscut saws are comprised of two types of teeth, cutter teeth and raker teeth. The gullet is between the two and is designed to hold the cut wood until the saw can drop that cut wood outside of the log. There is quite a bit of technical information on dimensions and angles for both cutter and raker teeth. Competent saw filers can make your day, a saw that sings in operation. On the other hand, a badly worn saw, or one that becomes out of tune, will become a misery whip in operation. The cutting action of the teeth are critical to understand what happens as the saw cuts through the log fiber. The teeth of a saw perform three basic functions. The cutters cut the wood fibers, the rakers break the cut fibers loose, and the gullets collect and remove the fibers from the kerf. The kerf is the cut in the log after the wood fibers have been removed. All saws have cutting teeth, regardless of the tooth pattern, and are made up of two rows of cutting edges. They function like a series of knives, making parallel cuts and releasing the wood fibers between them. Cutters work best in brittle, seasoned wood. The weakened fiber is easily removed. A special kind of tooth, the raker, allows the cutter teeth to work more effectively with less effort. Even though the rakers don't sever fiber, they perform the other two functions of a saw tooth, breaking loose the cut fiber and removing it from the log. Rakers remove material when the saw is being pushed or pulled. When rakers are shaped properly and their depth has been set accurately, they pull out long shavings of wood, called noodles, rather than sawdust. If your saw cutters are sharp and set properly, and the rakers are formed correctly and are at the proper depth, the saw will perform smoothly and cut efficiently, producing shavings that are called noodles. So now that we know a little bit about a crosscut saw and how it operates, just what is a saw team?